Hello and welcome. I'm Jenny Hall. Today I am celebrating with Honey Bee Stamps for their 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. There is a giveaway and there is a discount code that is listed on screen. If you're interested in any of the details, check the video description. I have a really fun card. It's very sweet to share with you today, and I'm going to also show you how I can use die cuts for an extended long card. I'm using some stamps from Honey Bee today, and I'll be using the Garden Lattice cover plate die set and the Slimline Sentiments eyelets die to complete the frame. My card base is 8.5 by 3.5 after it's scored and folded. First thing I'm going to do is to create a template for my die cuts. You may have seen this technique before, but if it's new to you, then simply take one of each of the images that you plan to feature and make a die cut for it. And give yourself lots of space in between. That way there's room for the edges of the photopolymer stamps. Place it in your MISTI. Pop back in one die cut of each of the images, and then place the photopolymer stamp over the die cut. Then ink it up, and there you go. You have a stamped image that's already die cut. And then once the image is already inked, simply pull it out of the template, replace it with an unstamped die cut, and then you can just simply work out all of the stamping in a very quick fashion. It's a really nice way to get all of your stamping and your inking done at one time. I'm going to stamp about 4 or 5 of each one of the images for this project. I'm using the large flower and the small flower from the freshly picked stamp set. And then I'm using the full-sized orange, then the orange slice, and the orange wedge. There is an empty space in the template that you can see, and that's because I chose not to use that leaf after all. I just went with 2 different leaves. I'm inking up today with Fade Out ink. This is a no-line watercolor ink from Ink on 3. And that's going to allow me to give that beautiful no-line color look. This ink works perfectly with my Zig pens, and so I'm going to just add some colors to them and try to remember to give each of the fruits an individual look. It's very easy for me to sit down and color, and I really enjoy it. But I want each one of the fruits to have a little bit of a unique look. So to start off with, I used the darkest of my 3 colors to go around the outside, use that mid-tone to blend and pull that dark out into the contours of the orange, and then used the yellow and just a clean water brush to spread the rest of the color around. And I really like the way that the no-line coloring picks up the ink color over the stamped image and turns that stamped line the color of the pen. It's like magic. It works perfectly every time. So I'm going to try to leave a few highlights on some of the images, and I'm being sure to use my darkest color on the outside, and then taking that next lighter color and smoothing it out into the remainder of the image. This image is the orange slice, and I imagine that it has these, those little tiny segments that are inside when you open up a piece of citrus. Well, my kids really like to pick and pull at those parts. And I thought, well, I've got to have this represented in the finished image. So I took the tip of the brush and just simply did some swirl marks, and it kind of looks like it's supposed to. That portion of the stamp image is empty, so I guess we could do however we want, but simply by taking and making some swirls, as you see here, was enough to give it a realistic look. Pretty cool, huh? So now I'm taking the other colors, and these are the same colors I used in the large orange, and moving them around on the fruit. And then here is another way to add those little the look of the segments. And I drew them on first so that you could see them very clearly. And now I'm just smoothing the colors out. And then I'll go back around it with that nice bright orange color. This is a very pretty stamp set. There are lots of different fruits that you can stamp with and create. I really like the lemons. The lemons can double as a lime, or I guess just about anything that you can imagine. And the strawberries are very beautiful too. Here are all the leaves that I die cut and stamped, and you can see here the stamped lines appear after the color goes on it. Isn't that cool? That's that fade out ink. Now I've done the same thing with the florals, and I used a very light gray to go over them, and so the lines will just show up just a little bit. Now to the card base. I'm adding some ink blending directly to the card front, and in order to block off the back of the card and to hold everything in place, I used a piece of Post-it tape that comes on a roll, and I placed that right along the score line so that the ink blending won't go onto the back of the card base. This is a Slimline card, and it could be turned as you see it here in the portrait orientation, or it can be flipped over on its side to where it is presented in a landscape format. For this particular project, I really imagined it to be in this fashion, but you could use it in any way you like. I'm peeling off that tape, and that's the fun part, is revealing after the ink blending. Now here is the way that I extended my die cuts. You could take a long piece of paper and just move that die down and make one continuous die cut. That is possible. However, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of futzing to try to get it to be straight. So I came up with another way. Instead, I put together two dies, the front and the back. I've trimmed them down to 3.5 inches wide, and then I'm just going to overlap them. This is the easiest way that I know to extend the die cuts and make it still look like it's one continuous die cut. I'm going to trim off the part that overlaps. I'll leave just a little bit of overlap. And because I have a Slimline border die from Honeybee Stamps, it's going to cover all of the edges on that uncut section on the far right side of the card. Any place that you see that it overlaps here, the lattice marks, then just simply use your scissors and cut it away to where it looks a little more natural. I'm going to cover up that overlap, and that way I know for sure that it won't appear in the finished product. See, by taking this eyelet Slimline die, then it completely covers all of the edges. It makes it look so nice and polished. That eyelet design is so pretty. And there we have it. It's extended, it's quick, it's fast, and I really enjoy having the look of this garden lattice cover plate die, but on a Slimline card with the beautiful blue Distress Oxides peeking through. Now I will place very nice little oranges and put them stacked up to where they look a little bit natural. I'm going to have them cascade from the top of the card and appear as if they're in bunches. I like these flowers too. They're so pretty. And so I'm going to kind of have an area spill over to the right and keep it looking as natural as possible. On the far right of the bottom, I have covered up that overlap of the die cut, and I'm going to use my sentiment to cover up the bulk remainder of it. But before I place the sentiment, I wanted to add some sparkle to some of the fruits and to the flowers. So that was used with the Spectrum Noir Sparkle pen. Now I'm going to make my sentiment really stand out in bold by heat embossing with white embossing powder onto black cardstock. This is one of my favorite ways to feature a sentiment, especially since Honeybee has taken the trouble of making these dies. It is so beautiful to just place my sentiment, and it's already fussy cut with a die cut. It's just something that makes my crafty life happy. Now I'll use the Moonlight rhinestones and place some of these pearly looking rhinestones around into different areas, and that's basically the remainder of the card. This is such a fun project. I would love to see what your thoughts are and if you like that very pretty sparkle. And don't forget about the discount code that's only valid for a limited time. Be sure to hop around, leave comments, and subscribe so that you can have a chance to win the $100 gift card. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.